So please, come on down. We are now going to talk about creating for a multi-platform world. So you've already met Scott. Next up, we have Jeremy Hochman from Megapixel, CEO and co-founder. After him, Dr. Mickaël Raulet from Ateme. We have Jeremy, then we have Saimon Kos from Hardpin Media. My orders in different ways on here. We have Simon, then we have Socrates Lozano from TVU Networks, VP of Solutions Americas. And finally, Dr. Mickaël Raulet at the end from Ateme. Thank you, guys. We're going to jump in and talk about multi-format world. But real first, you've all met Scott, so let's kick it off. Jeremy, give me just, I don't know, a sentence or two on what you're building and at Megapixel, and we can take it from there.
Yeah, Jeremy from Megapixel. We build LED processing and distribution technology for very, very large format displays that you see on concerts and movie sets. And we build the displays as well sometimes, and we like to light up pixels in a beautiful way. Big pixels in beautiful ways. Simon?
My company's a positive impact media company. We're born out of sort of presidential politics, started with the Obama 2012 campaign and sort of have been, evolving with digital content creation and trying to provide ways for our clients to tell great stories that move people and drive impact.
And you worked on the Biden campaign in what, 2012?
I've worked on every presidential
campaign?
Since 2012, yeah. And so it's been, for this conversation, also an interesting sort of evolution of where formats are going every 4 years, because it's always different.
Absolutely. Okay, Socrates.
Socrates Lozano, VP of Solutions for TVU Networks. We primarily do a lot of hardware solutions, but also SaaS and cloud solutions, specifically for production, so an end-to-end workflow, whether it's gathering the signal, distributing the signal, or doing production switching. A lot of our brand within the last couple of years has exploded in the creator space as like the premium, enablement tool for large creators on YouTube, Twitch, and other platforms.
Yeah, and also strong journalism and news background, right?
Yeah, so the company started specifically primarily in the broadcast
He's our news journalist ringer here, so I'm glad to have you here. And Mickaël?
So Mickaël Raulet, I'm CTO at Ateme, working on video compression from the stadium to the end user, mostly for broadcasters, telcos, and OTT streamers. We mainly work on the video compression, trying to keep the artistic intent with the minimal number of bits that we are delivering to the end user.
Yeah, push it through the pipes and make sure it looks good for the viewer, which is nice. Let's talk about multi-format now. What do we mean by multi-format? It's not just, we were talking a little bit about vertical dramas and then talking a little bit about wide and what YouTube has done on television, but multi-format's a lot more than that. Who wants to define multi-format for me? That's not Scott, because he's already talked. Who wants to take it up? Anybody?
Start with streaming, maybe.
I can, yeah. So multi-format is to be able to deliver to as many devices as we have today. So we have mobile phones, we have traditional TVs, and we have the goggles that we need to deliver. For that, we have various ways of doing it. So today, the way we are doing it is by the OTT to deliver many variants of them in order to be able to display them into the device. And we use many codecs for that, which is where we are getting the many formats in order to get the HDR, for instance, or the stereoscopic version of it.
So Jeremy, you've said it, 16 by 9, maybe we should throw it away as our core. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, for a lot of the things that we do...
Hold the mic up and try and eat it.
For a lot of the things that we do, we're putting very large displays in spaces. So, for example, in a setting like this, the display might be the entire back wall, right? So it could be 100, 200 feet wide. And one of the things that is very common is, let's say, a new product is launching from a company that's debuting interesting things. There's this very large screen that probably is not 16 by 9 because it's as large as it can possibly be to fill a room, which is designed architecturally. It's not designed to be a television, right? It's a wall. So that needs to get filled. And then it might be filmed with a cinematic camera that could have a 4:3 ratio sensor in it that's then cropping down to 16 by 9 to go out to broadcast for people's TVs. And so all of these things already are kind of not 16:9 anymore, and it's really like the last pipe that it's being cropped to. And so I say throw it away, because especially with protocols like SMPTE 2110 now, it's just bandwidth. We can pipe any pixel anywhere we want in any shape and size, and we wouldn't. So many times it's not going onto a television anymore. The devices in our pockets, the things that we use, with our feet propped up, on the couch, none of them are 16:9 format anymore.
Yeah, Simon, what do you think about the formats that you use when you try and tell the stories of these candidates?
Yeah, I think, as a storyteller first, I think about this sort of as the difference between sort of reach and impact. And I think we have to think about formats from a standpoint of maximizing reach, and sort of like a fragmented media ecosystem. You have to really make sure that your content is getting everywhere. But when it comes to impact and storytelling, I think there's still a lot of really value and power in 16:9 storytelling. There's a lot you can do from a visual language standpoint, from a storytelling standpoint, that's really important and that people are really comfortable with, because it sort of represents the way we see the world in a lot of ways, and that's a really powerful thing. And I think what we're trying to do, and what I think a lot of folks are doing, is thinking about ways to make sure that we can do that and still reformat those things in an effective way so they have the same or similar impact on other platforms. And the reality is that these things are always going to continue to shift and change. You're seeing it with folding phones and all of these things. So where things will go 2-3 years from now, it's just going to be another sort of iteration of like, how is that changing our thinking about the shape of the content and how people consume it.
Yeah, and Socrates, when you think about live, because you do a lot of live versus what you do in post, multi-format, how do you think about multi-format in that world?
Yeah, first, to kind of go along with the first 2 points, is I love the idea that like camera manufacturers are now unlocking things like OpenGate, so that you don't necessarily have to think about the format, because the format can kind of come later on downstream. But specifically with live, when it comes down to consuming live video, watching live video, I think the biggest thing would be able to be able to distribute that content in its native format. So whether it's 16:9 or native vertical, it shouldn't necessarily matter. The challenge that I think we have, whether it's creators don't necessarily have the patience, the time, or the technical know-how on how to actually do that. There's a lot of setup that's currently involved in a lot of these workflows, and some of the things that we've been focusing on trying to figure out is how do we make this as simple as possible so that the technology can just be a creative enablement tool instead of something that gets in the way.
And Scott, if it's not aspect ratio, what is important in multi-format? Like, what are the key things we should be thinking about?
I mean, I'm just going to always come back to the idea that great storytelling can transcend whatever screen it lives on. And I think we're in worlds. We shoot full frame, open gate, and we try to keep in different aspect ratios in mind as well. But ultimately, I think what you put in that box is ultimately so much more important. And it's very important what box you put it in, but it's ultimately what you put in is what I'll always come back to.
Right. Does anybody remember when Snap came out with their glasses and we had the round format? Does anybody think a round format's coming back, or a good format to do? Round?
The thing that I loved about the Snap glasses that a lot of like the Ray-Bans Meta still hasn't necessarily replicated is you could do both vertical and 16:9 in the same video experience. And today that's still not, nobody's still able to replicate like the seamlessness of that. So I loved the Snap glasses. They were like way ahead of their time at the time.
So it's coming back. All right.
Totally.
You're going to welcome it back. All right. Well, let's talk about audiences and the context that matter for them, and weave in a little bit of enterprise as well. Jeremy, what's best? How do you change what's best when you judge sort of large format perception? Because if you're looking at, and I was just at an event where we literally had the screen that spanned the entire stage and beyond, and it's tough because the pixels popped in a bad way when people are taking photos. So how do you judge what's best when it's that big of a format?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think with the large format, what comes down for me is the quality of the pixels, right? So having good color workflow, having a good color gamut, but also having something that is appropriate for the space. It's not appropriate to put a display in this room that's bright enough for an outdoor concert. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be consuming too much power. It's going to distract us on stage, right? So I think the same way that on a stage you wouldn't put like a physical set piece that's going to distract an actor. It's the same thing for the display. You want something that's going to help people's presentations and be natural, but it needs to be part of the complete ecosystem so that our eyeball exposure is treated with the same preciousness that exposure in a camera is, right?
Yeah, and like, what if you're creating for, like in your case, Scott, creating micro dramas that in many ways are going to be consumed on a phone? Do you think about, oh, what's this going to look like if it ends up on a big screen? What's it going to look like if it ends up on somebody's glasses or maybe in a VR set? Is that anything that comes to mind when you're shooting?
I mean, something like a VR set we're not thinking about yet. I mean, the way we shoot at such a high resolution anyway because you're able to like take a two shot and turn it into two singles if you need. We're thinking about the platform we're going to end up on, but yeah, we're also trying to future-proof at the same time. I mean, at the level that I operate with, the technical depth that I have to operate with, we don't get that complex with it, but it's something we think about and are trying to future-proof, yeah.
Yeah, and Mickaël, from a tech perspective, which of these contexts, which of these sizes is the hardest and why? Is it trying to get sort of the non-standard 16:9:9:16, or is it something really huge, or what, when you look at it?
So what people like is to have a single production. So this is what they are liking in the end, to reduce the cost of the production. And to do everything automatically is a bit challenging. So in order to create the best video experience for both HD, SD, and very big device. So the challenge is always the number of pixels that we are getting. If we want to have an 8K or 16K or very big screen, that's starting to be very challenging with what we are getting today. So that's the most challenging part. So the VR headset is very, very challenging today in what we have to deliver to them. But still, is the cost of the end-to-end system is very important in the end. So, and also, people are speaking about 16:9 and 9:16. What do we want to do is to have also a single production out of it and to be able to derive an automatic 9:16 or 16:9, to do Gen AI for the part that we don't see and keep the full video for the part that we see. That's the challenge that we are also getting in order to see if we need to extract or extrapolate the upper bound of the 16:9 in order to do a 9:16, or to extract into this particular video what the people would like to look at. So that's the part that is also very challenging in the end.
Socrates and Simon, I'd like to talk a little bit about the pipeline of production. And does the pipeline break when you try and do this? And do you have sort of the bosses or the wonks in the companies like looking down on you saying, it's got to be best everywhere? How do you deal with that? Socrates, I think I'll start with you, but I'd love to get your sense of how you deal with those external forces and where things break.
Yeah, I think speed matters a lot. So being able to enable the creatives as fast as possible. The streamer space is actually where, in my opinion, a lot of the innovation is happening right now, specifically for Twitch streamers that are IRL or in real life and streaming in actual physical locations, because the ideas that they have are generally very last minute, meaning they just think of an idea that they want to do, and from a production standpoint could be extremely complex. We were doing something recently with iShowSpeed where he went to NASCAR and then decides that he wants to get into this NASCAR where there's no production rigging that's involved and it's a live stream that's happening. So you have their cameraman that are pulling out phones and duct taping them to the interior of the car. So the pressure, and then the audience is just as big as any sort of large broadcast audience that you have. You have 60 million viewers that are actively watching that stream. And so there is not a lot of room for failure. And so I think, on the front end, we have to understand the personality of the person that's trying to create what their streams are like, and then try to anticipate all the different things that can go wrong and plan for it in a way that somebody that's not technical, when something's going wrong, can react in a way that doesn't completely distract from the production experience, which is very different than how traditional broadcast operates, where you have 2 weeks worth of rehearsals or longer, where everyone's just going through that workflow and nailing it. That's not at all how the streamer space operates. And so we've learned to be nimble and a lot more flexible than we've ever had to in the past.
Okay, we could talk a lot about iShow speed and some of the complexities that you got. I mean, I love what he does, and I can only imagine what it's like working on his crew. Simon, what about you? How do you feel about that world where you're dealing with some very huge personalities?
Yeah, I think for us, it comes back to sort of like trying to, the people we work with want their content to be able to live everywhere, right? Whether it's CTV, whether it's on social platforms, whether it's on YouTube. And so for us, we always start from a place of, okay, how can we make content that can live in all those places? But not just from a standpoint of versioning and formatting that content, but also optimizing for what those platforms need, whether that's like a hook in the first 3 seconds of the piece of content, or something where it can sort of breathe more. And then also really, in the world of politics and things, budget shrink, people want more for less, there's a lot of that. And so we're really thinking about like, how can we make sure we're creating a workflow that's leveraging a lot of this new technology, especially in AI, that allows us to create more versions and more formats of content quickly and deliver those in a way that is to the standard that our clients expect.
Let's talk a little bit about the experience for the viewer. And the content experience is so important. I think, Socrates, you said, start with the content experience and then go back to the look. How do you come up with the questions that define that and still be able to come up with the look that works across all these different formats?
I think the key to all of this is having the experience of sitting in that chair and knowing what that pressure is like from a creative standpoint or not. Prior to me being at TVU, I ran a national team for the EW Scripps company and specifically launched streaming across across our organization. And so I think hiring people that have that experience and have sat in the seats, the questions to ask extremely quickly because you've done elections, multiple times in your sleep. And so the infrastructure that's involved, the things that can go wrong. And really, it's about partnering with your customer, your client, to be able to see something to success in the end.
Yeah, Scott, how does that dense, fast storytelling that will keep the experience front and center work?
I mean, I tell our writers, especially in the first 20 minutes of our stories, every single episode, and every episode is never longer than a page and a half and usually a bit shorter, the stakes have to be constructed in such a way that if the main character does not overcome the novel obstacle of that episode, the story will end. That has to be how high the stakes are. You have to grab them by the lapels and hold on because you hit a paywall at episode 10. And this is something that I learned at Mr. Beast that Jimmy Donaldson himself talked about is, he brings you in, and when you start with him and his company, he says, a lot of people think I go to a 10 and I stay at a 10 to the very end, and I don't. I go to a 10, and for about the first 20%, we keep the energy really intense, and then we slow things down, and we create opportunities to plant other story elements that will pay off at a really big emotional payoff at the end. And that's something that we take when we make these micro dramas as well, is grab them by the lapels, but then re-sequence the important work to pay off at the end later on.
Jeremy, when you look at the experience first on these huge non-standard canvases, how does it change the design when you're thinking, wow, we're just going to make this like, you've seen the screens that wrap all the way around or screens in various different arenas and things like that. How do you think about the experience first in that world?
I think it really depends on the type of environment and the type of show, because sometimes, even though the standard, we might be throwing a standard out the window for the size and shape of the screen, it might be that we know that that it's being filmed and the broadcast is going to televisions, and so that means that there needs to be region of interest that still conforms to that. So, bringing up the conversation of like AI extending backgrounds and other things, even something like this slide that's up now with our photos, you can very much imagine that slide extending much wider and the pictures spacing out, right? But the content creative itself isn't changing too much. But then you have an environment that is not made necessarily for broadcast. Like I was very involved in the design of this, very small ball-shaped place in Las Vegas that you can go into and see concerts.
It's lovely. Who's been to the Sphere? Who's been there? You have to go. Okay.
It's a very wonderful place. But that's absolutely like in-person viewer first, right? You see a lot of stuff posted on social, but there's no regard for what a camera is going to see in that space. And so I think really understanding the use case of who is the observer, right? Is the observer on a couch looking at a phone? Is the observer in a concert venue? That really matters and needs to inform the creative choice.
Mickaël, are there some early tech choices that have to be made that'll help protect that experience for the viewer?
Yes, the choice of the codec is what you will get the best video experience at some point. So in the past, we were using H.264 in order to have SDR experience. You cannot use this codec anymore if you want to do HDR. So you need to pass to another experience in order to have the 10 bits experience out of this. So this is where you are getting most of the experience. And on our side, people are asking us to reduce the bandwidth at the bare minimum in order to get that bandwidth or the bitrate for everyone available, even very far from the content and all this kind of stuff. So we need to preserve the artistic intent of the viewer. Something that we don't like is grain. We don't like to encode the grain, for instance, but people are asking us to preserve the grain. So this is very challenging in the end in order to make it like the artistic intent of the producer. So this is the thing that we have to do. And the magic sauce of what we do as a video compressionist is to preserve the artistic intent of the original content. For UHD, just to give a number, we start from 12 gigabits per second, and people are looking at today at 6 or 10 megabits per second. So we are reducing by a lot the number of bits that we are using for a particular video today.
And Simon, when you work with your clients and the tech people come in and say, we need this, but then the brand says this, and the production people say this, and then maybe the person in front of the camera says this. How do you resolve that kind of conflict?
I mean, at the end of the day, we always operate under, the client knows best, and so we try to do what the person that's paying us is telling us to do, and then we just do our best to sort of guide that in a way that sort of gets everybody happy and delivers a product that satisfies the audience that they're trying to reach. It's always a challenge, but you just at the end of the day, if that's what they want, that's what they want.
That's what they want. Yeah. They get what they want. All right, we've got about 7 minutes left. We're gonna go through some of this stuff pretty quickly. I want to talk a little bit about digital for a minute. A lot of times in the corporate model, it's like, okay, what's going on the big screen is what's most important, and digital just takes second or third or fourth place. Socrates, you've been involved in this a lot, where all of a sudden it's 16 to 20 digital platforms and one person is running it. How do you manage that? How do you fix that?
A lot of patience. No, I think that the challenge is oftentimes, especially like in the traditional broadcast world, digital and broadcast are seen as completely separate. And so, and if something is creative or different, oftentimes, whether it's an editorial meeting or any of these production meetings, it's like, that will play really well, but on digital. And it's like, okay, well, we're going to assign it to this producer that has like 16 other responsibilities that they're doing and that they're playing, that they're trying to balance every single day. And I think like just content is great content, period, no matter what platform it's running in. And yes, depending on what platform it is, each platform should have its own kind of content strategy that the content is created for. But more importantly, like if it's great content, then it should run anywhere on any platform at any point in time. And I think the faster we change our mindset and think in that way, the better content we're going to ultimately make, because it's one content strategy that we have that we're moving forward with, instead of like 16 different with a bunch of different teams that are all siloed and creating different deliverables from one another.
Simon, you look like you had something to share.
No, I mean, I remember back in 2012, like being part of the team that was like we were at the kids table, sort of, you go shoot this, go make this live stream with a backpack, it's cute, it'll go on Facebook. And oftentimes, the content that we were capturing and creating would the traditional sort of media partners would want copies of it because the quality was there, and and what we captured sort of could work for anywhere. And now we live in a world where the digital table is the table. Like everybody's at the digital table, and there's still this sort of like tension in the world of politics around who gets the money and where does it go. But the reality is where there's the most success is where everybody's working together and understands that all of these resources and all of these the content, whatever, can all sort of benefit everybody in a really creative way. And I'll just mention one thing because this has come up a lot recently. A lot of folks have sort of pointed at Zoran Mamdani and his campaign and what he was able to do in New York, and they're like, oh, his digital strategy was so great. He created all this content. We need to have a digital person. And it's like, no, he had a team. He had a lot of people and consultants, and they were working a ton. Like if you look at his sort of filings, like there were a lot of people working on that and the strategy and what they captured and the stories they were telling. And so, like when we talk to people about digital strategy, it's everything. You should really be thinking about it in terms of like, where the content can go, what formats, all of those things in one place with everybody sort of working together.
Anybody want anything else on this sort of broadcast digital divide and bridging it, maybe from a tech perspective or anything?
For me, it always comes back to wanting the tech to actually go away, right? It's about the storytelling and about what people are consuming. And if the message, whether it's, messaging, information, or entertainment, you want that thing to be entertaining, right? It doesn't matter what shape and size and what you're watching it on at the end of the day.
Go ahead, Mickaël.
I also think the device is driving a bit more the storytelling today. I don't know if some of you have tried the Apple Vision Pro and the way you can consume into it. It's very different than the way it was produced before. You feel that you are part of the new environment, so the way that you are filming or producing is very different than today. And this is something where the tech is bringing something different and will drive the industry to something different. So we start from the device, and the device will bring then a different way of producing the content.
All right, we're going to go to a lightning round. We've got about 2.5 minutes left. So in this one, I'm going to say a question. I want each of you to give me a word or maybe a sentence at first. So let's start off with AI. We didn't talk about AI at all, so we might as well. AI, opportunity or risk?
It's an opportunity if we keep a watchful eye on what we're doing.
Opportunity or risk, Jeremy?
Opportunity for faster editing and more options for the person making the decision of what goes out.
Simon?
Opportunity when you think about it in terms of tools versus generative AI.
Okay, Socrates?
Opportunity to level the playing field creatively.
Yep, Mickaël?
Also an opportunity even for video compression, how to generate a higher video compression in here.
So we'll talk a little bit about live here. Latency or quality, which is better? What do you protect it and why? And Socrates, I'm going to start with you.
It doesn't matter outside of sports.
Okay, Mickaël?
It matters on my side.
What? It matters on my side?
Yeah, that's the trade-off between latency and quality, depending on the use case, when it is betting or if it is broadcast video quality in there.
Yep, latency or quality?
Quality.
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 Quality, okay, we got some quality here. Okay, let's say you want a clip. You're creating content. You know you're going to be clipping it for short form. What's the first decision you make if you want your content to clip well later? Who wants to take that first? What do you do if you want to make clips? Go ahead.
That's where I really lean into, like, maybe we're capturing this 9:16 versus 16:9, because if you're clipping, if where you're putting your content post long form is going to be on the social platforms, optimizing for that makes a ton of sense. And we've tried to do that with some of the live stream experiments we've done on our end, and it's when you do it right, it can be really effective, and you can turn a ton of content really fast.
Clipping?
Speed to publish is extremely important. So being able to move extremely quickly, I think, is the key to success of any content strategy. One of the big things, though, that I think is like a creative enablement tool is being able to just use a clipping tool, but having a clear content strategy that supports it. Yes, maybe your delivery method is going to be to a 16:9 platform, but if clipping is part of that short form, then from a content planning standpoint, that has to be built in right off the top, so that you can move quickly, you can distribute to all the different platforms that you need to.
Clipping? All right, last one. We have no seconds left. What's the metric you use to figure out whether something is quality or not in a multi-format world? Best metric you keep an eye on.
Are the people that made it proud of what they did?
Are they proud?
Did I lose myself in watching it?
Did I lose myself?
How do people react to the content?
How do they react?
Is what you're doing super cool, and then
Is
you're
it super
successful?
cool and successful?
Blowing your eyes.
Oh, yeah, all right. Scott, Jeremy, Simon, Socrates, Mickaël, give it up for these guys. Thank you very much.